This is Crash Bandicoot The Wrath of Cortex, and I don't have a plan for this video. If you're expecting something that's like heavily edited and well thought out, like some of my other recent modding videos, then this is not going to be like that. This is probably going to be more like one of those live streams I did, except it won't be live because it's not. So I'm just going to mess around with this game for a bit and talk about some stuff and respond to some things that people have said in response to the things that I have done, and we'll take it from there. So what's going on? This is The Wrath of Cortex, and I have modded it to make Crunch playable. The way that I've had to do this, for many reasons that I can't be bothered to explain, is I've had to replace Coco with Crunch. If you do it with Crash, it won't work, and I've also had to delete Crash from the game, because if you leave him in, it won't work. And I could sit here for half an hour and tell you why, but you don't care, do you? You just want to see Crunch being Crunch. So one of the problems presented by the fact that I've removed Crash from the game is that I can no longer walk around the warp room and access any levels. So I have to use this debug menu, which I'm also not going to explain. Just Google it. If you want to use the debug menu, Google it. It's all out there. So because I've replaced Coco instead of Crash, the only levels that I can use Crunch in are Coco levels, which I don't need to go through a list of them. Google it if you want a list. But let's try Avalanche. So basically, oh god, look at Crash. Basically what I've done is firstly replaced Coco's model with Crunch's model, and then replaced all of Coco's animations with Crunch animations. And it's complicated and it took a while to do, but now that I've cracked it, it's actually not such a complicated process. So Crunch will work in any Coco level. These animations that you're seeing here, I had to like specify which animations to use. So the reason why like the only thing he does is run and jump is basically because those are the only real animations that I could fit into the file. Because, well, okay, I don't know anything about PS2 modding, but from what I've gathered, the only real way to do it successfully is to just edit the ISO file of the game you're messing with. If you extract it and rearrange stuff and like rebuild an ISO from the modified files, it won't work because of the way that PS2 games work. That's what I've read. I'm sorry if it's wrong. And I guess, I don't know, there might be a way to mod like the GameCube or the Xbox version instead that's completely different, and it will allow you to do more stuff, but I haven't tried it. So the way that I've done this is just by editing the ISO file for the game, which I did rip from my own copy of the disc, so I didn't, there's no piracy going on here. Don't call the police. I can show you my disc if you want to see it. But because I had to edit the ISO file and I wasn't actually changing any of the contents of it, I could only, like, just like what I was doing when I was playing as different characters in the Insane Trilogy, you only have a certain amount of space to work with when you're retyping parts of the file, and you can't change the file size or everything will break. All of those same rules apply. So the reason why, for example, there's no death animation when I get killed by something here, it just zooms in on his butt, which is great. There's no death animation because the death animation that plays when you die as Coco is just called die, right? And while Crunch does have some death animations, they're called things like defeated, which will not fit in the space where Coco's death animation is written in the file. That's not a very good way of explaining it, but this is what happens when I just start playing a game and start talking. I haven't thought this through. So Crunch has a running animation and he has a jump animation, and those are about the only ones that I managed to fit into the file. He does have an attack animation called uppercut, which is like an uppercut, but it's such a slow attack that it doesn't really work as a representation of breaking stuff in the level. So I didn't use it. Here we go. Let's do some snowboarding as Enormous Crunch. Oh, look at him go. Oh, he is magnificent. Oh, I better hurry up. So, yeah. So, I also tweeted a video of this part of this level where I was playing as Tiny. And basically, once you work out how to do this with one character, you can kind of do it with anyone, with some exceptions. And just like when I was trying to replace Crash with Crunch, anything you do to Crash will basically break the game. So using the method that I've used, I think it's only Coco levels that you can do this in. There may be a way to like trick the game into letting you play as Coco in Crash levels, like you can with the Insane Trilogy, and then if you can do that, you can play as Crunch in any level, or any other character you want to. The main reason I'm using Crunch is because he's one of the few that actually has a proper running animation, so it doesn't look quite as shit as some of the other characters. And also, he's massive, so I just think it's hilarious. I think maybe the game will actually break at this point. For some reason, Crash has been replaced by the bazooka, and I can no longer do anything. I can't pause the game, so I do have a save state, but I'll just quickly show you what it looks like with another character. Here we go. Alright, so this is exactly the same thing, except I've done it with Dingodile instead of Crunch. So if I just take him into a level, let's pick one. What did I just do? Avalanche. Let's do Nighttime. So Dingodile and like the other boss characters like Tiny or Engine or Entropy or even Cortex, you can do the same thing with, but the problem is they don't have many animations because they're not really in the game very much. So you can play as Dingodile or Cortex or any of those characters, but like they're very limited. This is the only like attacking animation I could find for Dingodile, and it's not really very good. So this looks awful, but I love Dingodile, so it's okay. So I think if you wanted to make like a proper mod for this, where you actually have a character who's running, you would have to do it with, I mean, probably your best bet would be a more minor enemy that runs towards you in the level and has an actual attack. Like, I don't know, maybe a knight. Oh god. Or maybe like the penguins from the snow levels, because they actually spin like Crash does. It might look alright, but generally it's going to look pretty terrible. But I mean, it's fun. I've always wanted to play as Dingodile, so this is sort of a dream come true. But it's pretty simple to do, actually. Once you've sort of cracked it, it just takes a while. I can do a quick demonstration of how I've actually been doing this, if you like. Oh god. But it takes a while to like set up one of these playable characters, but it's pretty simple to just like do a model swap of something else in the game, and then you basically just use exactly the same technique to do this, but you replace Coco instead of something else. So I am gonna do some modding right now, live, but not really. Oh god. Okay, here we go. So I'm back in an unmodified version of the game. This is straight from my PS2 disc, and this is the first level in the game, Arctic Antics, in which there are a few mammoths dotted about, and you can kill them and get extra lives. There's one at the end as well, and just as a simple demonstration of this kind of modding, I am going to replace, or I'm going to attempt to replace them with Crunch, my old friend, because I want to see how, like, how big he is compared to Crash and these mammoths. So I'm going to stick some crunches in the level and see what it looks like. So this is the actual ISO of the game that I ripped from my PS2 disc this morning that I was just running in PCSX2. So in order to replace the mammoths with crunch, I'm going to have to do a few different things. First of all, I'm going to look for the mammoth. So I assume it's going to be called mammoth, and the part that I'm looking for, because there's a few occurrences of the word mammoth in this file, I'm going to keep going until I see something that looks like this, and there's a couple of, okay, so C/mammoth, what does that mean? Well, this is the folder, for the mammoth character, which I've extracted from the character's archive thing from the game. Again, I'm not going to explain it all. Google it if you want to know what's going on. But you can see there's a few different folders in here, and the mammoth is in folder C, which is why in the file it says C/mammoth. So if I want to replace that with crunch, I need to find where crunch's folder is, and I happen to know that it's in D. So here's what crunch looks like. If I go over to here and change this to D/crunch, and then also, I don't know if this is completely necessary, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to change this mammoth to crunch and get rid of that, and then change this bit as well to crunch. And now, if I open up the game, this is what happens when you try and load Arctic Antics after applying the mod that I just did. And I will just point out, I know I said that this game was completely unmodified and the loading screen has been changed to oh fuck. That is not actually a mod. I did that through a cheat that I've left in the game. So the game itself is still unmodified in that part of the file. The cheat is making it say oh fuck. But this is where using PCSX2 comes in handy, because you get a handy little information log about what's going on, and you can debug stuff. So you can see there's a little error message here that says open file name Charles D crunch idle.ani. What that means is the mammoth folder contains an animation called idle, which is used by the mammoth in the level. And there's also a few more: L step, R step, and toss. And in order to load the mammoth, or whatever it is that you replace the mammoth with, the game needs to be able to find these animations. But if we go back over to crunch, while he does contain an idle animation here, it's inside an A folder. So the only way to get the mammoth to load properly is to find where it says in the code where the idle animation actually is, and replace it with A/idle, so that it loads the idle animation from crunch, instead of trying to look for one that doesn't exist. I'm not explaining anything very well, am I? So here is where the idle animation is mentioned in the ISO file, and this is what the game is looking for when it loads the mammoth. It knows that the mammoth has an idle animation, and this is what it thinks it's called. If I replace that with A/idle, which I know is where crunch's idle animation is, then that will be ticked off the list. And if I load it again, it will tell me that there's other missing animations, because as I showed you before, the mammoth also has L step, R step, and toss. So I'm also going to replace those animations with A/idle, just so you can see crunch in the level. So what were they called? L step. Keep going until I find it in the list. L step, here's R step as well. Change these both to A/idle. And then there was also the toss animation, which I guess is what happens when you spin one of the mammoths. They get a bit angry and, well, they toss you. So I'm also, oh, there it is. It's right there next to these others. I'm going to replace it with A/idle as well. Now, here I am trying to load the level again, and it says loading instead of oh fuck. It's still the same version of the game. The reason why it doesn't say oh fuck anymore is because, as I said, that was a cheat and not a mod. And now the CRC of the game has changed because I've modified it so the cheat doesn't work anymore. Don't worry about it. The thing is, the level's still not loading. So if we go back over to this log, try and see what's going on, you can see there's no errors about crunch anymore, but we have one here that says open fail name skier a/idle. So what that means is that the skier character that's also present in this level, was it in D, is that what it said? Skier. The skier has an idle animation that we've also managed to replace. But because a/idle doesn't exist in here, it's not going to work. So basically, the skiers in the game aren't going to work anymore. And the only way I found to make the level load without them is to just replace them with something that's not in the level. So you can probably just replace these all with zeros, but the first time I did it by replacing it with something that wasn't in the level, and I think that's funnier, so I'm going to change skier to dragon, just because I can. YOLO. And then, what I'm going to do before I run the game again is just have a look at the other enemies that I know are in the game and check if they have idle animations, because if they do, I'm going to have to delete those as well. So, penguin. The penguin has PF idle, so it won't be affected. I haven't changed PF idle to anything else, so the penguin should be fine. And I know there's also seals in this level, so I'm just going to try and find the seal folder. Oh, there's narwhals as well, aren't there? But all they have is jump. I haven't changed any jump animations, so that should be fine. Here's the seal, and they just have walk. So again, that shouldn't be a problem. So what I've done is, let me load the game again. I have replaced the mammoth with crunch. I've replaced the mammoth's animations with crunches, and I've removed the skiers from the level. And now, because the narwhals and the seals don't have any animations called idle, I won't have affected those. And they also don't have L step, R step, or toss, which is a terrible shame. But hopefully, the level will now load, and when I go to the place where the mammoths normally are, I will instead see my old friend Crunch Bandicoot. Just before I get to the mammoths, this is the part of the level where the skiers normally are. They're normally going up and down these slopes, and there aren't any here. So again, just like when Crash wasn't loading before, it's not like I've just removed the model from the game. The enemies are actually completely gone. So that's pretty fun. Let's keep going and see if I can find some wild crunches. And here we go, look at that. Oh, isn't he magnificent? And he's still going to give me an extra life because he is just a mammoth. So there you go. It wasn't that complicated, was it? It gets a bit more complicated if you want to make him playable, but the principle is exactly the same. You just replace Coco instead of the mammoth, and she's got a lot more animations than the mammoth, but keep going, you'll get there eventually. And yeah, there's a Crunch Bandicoot in the level, and I'm not going to do it now, but you can mod the game to change his position. You can use the level editor to change his position and do all that fun stuff, but I'm not going to do that now. If for some reason you want me to make another video about the Wrath of Cortex where I do some level editing, then let me know. If you don't, if you think this was horrible, if you think I should stick to heavily edited things that I've actually planned, let me know. I just wanted to mess with this game a bit. Bye! Banzai bonsai.